Welcome to the Holistic Wealth Hustle Podcast, where you can get a lifetime upgrade to stop pursuing happiness and start letting joy pursue you. That's right, it's your turn to be pursued by pure joy. This is your host, Pamela Ramos Brown of Be Wealthy with Pamela, LLC, celebrating 20 years as an experienced management consultant and personal coach. Are you in the mid-sized business race, a woman entrepreneur, solopreneur, or a professional who believes you can always do better for yourself and others? We're there with you, so you won't have to go alone. In every episode of the Holistic Wealth Hustle, we help decode the secrets of all elements of true wealth, not just financial, but also inclusive of life, love, and work. We exchange practical strategies, share inspiring stories, and offer actionable insights to help unlock our authority for the joyful life beyond what we envision. Let's go together from tolerating the ordinary to enjoying the supernatural. This is the Q&A session of the Holistic Wealth Hustle podcast. It's related to episodes 1 through 4. So one of our first questions is marriage bad for business? And this comes from episode 3 where we had 2 questions. So this is our first question. So we talked about in episode 3 about how divorce is one of the biggest detriments to wealth. And then we also talked about the cost of failing in love, and that cost on finances, emotional wellness, our focus at work, our children issues causing stress, childcare challenges, and time off. We talked about the statistics on marriages ending, causing depression and time off, financial cost of marriage and the financial cost of divorce. And remember, those numbers were pretty big for some of them. I mean, with marriages, sometimes they ranged from up to 50,000, and for divorce, they went all the way up to 80 billion plus. So those were some really big numbers. And a lot of these people who had these big numbers, of course, were in a lot of cases business owners or CEOs. You know, they had to be making some pretty big money to spend that kind of money on getting married and getting divorced. So let's talk about this. And so also we talked about, or here's some things to consider when we are hiring people who are married, or we are the married persons ourselves running these businesses. Then we have to consider things like employee benefits for spouses. And then nowadays, we even have to look at these common law situationships where you may even have to provide employee benefits for somebody's common law spouse. And we also, sometimes I've experienced this at places that I've worked where, you know, companies have to deal with these survivor benefits for the spouses, particularly in cases where the spouses may not have taken care of that beneficiary information properly, like, you know, putting their spouse's name on, you know, some of their survivor benefits. And what if some of their survivors are, in this particular situation, common law spouses? So, you know, companies have to, you know, be diverted a little bit dealing with that. I literally experienced that from, you know, some people that I worked with. And so here was a really, really interesting suggestion. When we talked about, is marriage bad for business? So please, please, please give us your comments. We would love to know. What are your thoughts about, is marriage bad for business? Should we, you know, think about this when we are, you know, running our own businesses, and even when we are hiring people who are married? Or what if we have some employees and they're getting ready to get married? should the risk factors go up for them with regards to being there in our business? Here was a suggested alternative by one person. This was a really interesting idea. It talked about maybe instead of marriage, how about forming a legal business together where the couples agree to certain goals and keep the assets and income separate. Now, this idea could be interpreted as a question to say, should marriage be a business transaction versus a romantic relationship? Because, really, a lot of times people get into these marriages and it does become very transactional versus relational. If you do this for me, then I'll do this for you. Well, since you didn't do this, I'm not doing that. And, it really a lot of times can become transactional versus relational. And so one of the examples that was given was setting up a legal business, something like Our Married Life LLC. Now, that really could be an interesting perspective. So I would be curious to know, and I wouldn't doubt that somebody has already done that. These things probably already exist somewhere, because I know some of these marriages that I've seen, particularly these Hollywood marriages, sometimes they kind of resemble these business deals versus love deals. So let's talk about that. Please let us know your thoughts on that. And again, from episode 3, where we talked about the cost of failing in love, here's another one that we talked about, because this was really interesting. So we fail at loving the ones we fall in love with. And sometimes we can't stand our own family members. Then other times we have fallouts with friends. And then our co-workers and employers are always trying to do us dirty from time to time. So there are all kinds of devils out there. And so this was the thing that came up where we talked about how Jesus has the nerve to say that he requires us, not encourages, but he requires us to love each other. So my question is, what do you say about this mandate? Are you going to be able to handle it? Are you going to be able to do what you are required to do? Are you going to be able to follow the rules and regulations with regards to loving each other? Because, how are we going to love each other when we can't even always continue to love the ones that we're with, the ones we fall in love with? And so I kind of had a, little experience with this to some extent. I had to go on a forgiveness journey in 2020. And it started out with a little whisper. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch, minding my own business. And so I got this little whisper, and it said, go and look at that book. And so previously I had, was just in my office, and one of the books that came across my attention was my yearbook, my high school yearbook. So, but when I was in the kitchen, it said, go and look at that book. And so when I went and looked at that book, at first it started off, it was really nice. It was like I was just reminiscing on all of the good times, so much fun that we had in high school and all of that stuff. And then eventually I got to some sections in the book that really brought back some memories. And believe it or not, it filled in some blanks of some things that, we have memories of stuff, and then there's some things that you can't completely remember about them. And so I went back and looked at that. And it made me fill in the blanks about some things that I really found to be helpful to know the answers to. And it really kind of clarified that some of my memories weren't as clear as I thought they were. Some of the things that I thought I remembered weren't necessarily true. And so it made me think about, how and why I ended up kind of falling out with some people that were supposed to be so-called friends. And some, things that happened in my history that could contribute to, where I was as a person. And so it was really interesting. So I made a little list, a forgiveness list. And I decided that I was going to focus on forgiving those persons that was on the list. But as a couple of days went by, I kept adding people to the list. And next thing you know, I had a very long list. I I mean, I included everybody that I could think of with the slightest infraction. I put them on the list. And so I realized that I had a lot of work to do. And when I tell you it was a lot of work, forgiveness is one of the hardest things that you have to do in your life. It's one of the hardest jobs that you'll ever have to do, one of the hardest goals that you have to achieve. A lot of people think losing weight is hard, but go through a forgiveness journey and see how hard that is. I cried many, many tears. Now, you would think that, forgiving people would, involve you trying to make somebody else cry. But no, it was a lot of tears, but it helped to get me past that point where I was able to, reach that level of forgiveness. And one of the things that was very helpful, a friend of mine shared a video with me from YouTube called Restorer by T.Y. Bello, T.Y.B.E.L.L.O. And it was called Restorer. And there was some really good information in there about forgiving and actually how to even approach that journey. So, but again, God requires us to love each other. People who we have different political opinions with, people who are attacking maybe attacking our nation, or, that we are at war with, or we think that they are, guilty of, wrongfully attacking, others and all kinds of things. People who commit crimes. So don't let them be a sexual offender, because that seems to be one of the worst kinds of crimes that people just absolutely cannot forgive. And they feel like that they have the right to, be the judge over those things. They even seem like that's a larger crime than even murder. So, but how are we doing with regards to the mandate that says that we are required to love each other? So, and how does failing in love, whether we're talking about failing in love in our marriage, or we're talking about failing in love with one another. So how are we doing with that? And what are your thoughts about it? We would love to know your opinion. So please let us know. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for continuing to be a part of the Holistic Wealth Hustle podcast by Be Wealthy with Pamela LLC. Each episode is designed to please. Be sure to take swift action on what you have learned today and update your weekly wealth planner or your holistic plan workbook to receive your rewards of joyfulness. Feel free to leave your comments below or by contacting us at www.bewealthywithpamela.com. That's B-E Wealthy with PAMELA.com. Please subscribe, share, stay tuned, and let joy pursue you.